This is a wonderful occasion. If I can get the microphones up high enough from him. You know, it's always a special pleasure to be introduced by Henry Kaufman, whatever its length. I am indeed. We are among our oldest friends. And when I say old, or when Henry says old, we mean old. It occurred to me that we were both born in the administration of Calvin Coolidge. You remember him? Silent Cal. Keep cool with Coolidge. See the way things have changed in the last 90 years. Actually, I added up our ages, and I discovered that we go back to, in consecutive years, go back to Abraham Lincoln. So we have a certain perspective. But here we are, in, not in the Civil War, but in a different kind of war, I guess. And I do appreciate the honor of receiving this lovely medal from an association long dedicated to the analysis, understanding, and support of foreign policy. Effective foreign policy, education about foreign policy is the mission of this organization. What could be more important than peaceful relationships among the nations of the world in all their diversity, their widely varying governing philosophies, difference in wealth, difference in ambitions? It's a tough challenge in the most favorable of circumstances. Now, I grew up long ago, not just physically, but intellectually, in the midst of World War II and the Cold War. So I and Henry naturally inherited the strong sense that the United States, was a natural and entitled international leader. Then by the 1990s, we could celebrate what came to be known as the end of history, the presumed triumph of democratic capitalism, a platform for enormous growth and reduced political tensions. All of that process from World War II till now has been accompanied by a flowering of think tanks, policy schools, various forums. Foreign Policy Association has been one of the leaders. You are devoted to sophisticated, rational debate and education about how to develop and maintain harmonious, or at least peaceful, relationships among nations. What could be a more worthwhile mission? So naturally, I take pride in associating myself with your work. But I also understand that the only thing that stands between you and going home to an early evening is me. Nonetheless, I can't resist a few moments of special pleading. Somehow, I wonder about what's happened. What's happened amid all the efforts of the Foreign Policy Association, the intelligence, the presumed goodwill generated by the flood of policy schools and students in the United States. Look around us instead. We're in a world of economic frustration, breakdown of order, armed conflict around the world, a seeming vacuum of responsible leadership. Who among us can view with any satisfaction the current manifestation of our own electoral processes, much less our role as an international leader? Well, I know that you know all about that. You agonize about it as much as I. I simply want to make a simple plea about a closely related matter that, in my view, gets much too little attention. We engage in endless debate about the size of government and just what the policies of that government should be. At the same time, we've come to pay hardly any attention to the essential need for the effective, economical, and honest execution of those policies that we agreed to adopt. I could lecture you interminably about the lapses in public administration that have grabbed our attention in recent years. You remember Katrina? We have an agency to deal with that kind of emergency. Where was it? Remember that oil spill in the Gulf? We have an agency that's supposed to concern itself with the safety of deep water drilling. Where was it? We had a great big new health program introduced by the Obama administration. A very complicated thing. And was there enough preparation so that it worked satisfactorily? Those are biggies. What about the Veterans Administration that somehow couldn't move their people around to serve the veterans in the way they're supposed to be served? And that wasn't purely a matter of money. Look, I could go on and keep you here for a long time about the problems of basic government administration and the extent to which that process of misadministration has undermined the element of trust essential to democracy. It would take too long to linger over it. So I can refer you to some of the publications of this new institution called the Volcker Alliance, but I won't bore you with that. But let me take a couple of minutes to remind you that we must acknowledge government provides essential services. You know about national defense, the need for law and public service, a lot of other things we take for granted, and we wish it gets done well. But going down further, how many of us would want to contemplate going without a highly professional Center for Disease Control whenever a question about epidemic or endemic arises around the world? Where do people go? To Atlanta. They go to Atlanta, to the Center for Disease Control. Or what about the Federal Drug Administration that protects our health? What about the effective supervision of financial markets? We didn't do too well in that a few years ago. We do expect Social Security checks to arrive on time. We have a huge commitment to health care. We have to protect the environment and natural resources. They have to rank high on our concerns. And of course, we want the strongest Army and Navy that money can buy, but we don't want it to be more expensive than it needs to be. Now, fortunately, we still have many thousands, millions of men and women devoted to public service. And you just heard about two of them, Bob Steele, who came out of business and spent some time in government. John Whitehead, who spent some time in government, found that the most satisfying part of his career by his own evidence. But we can't escape the fact that public management has fallen short of what we need. What we as citizens are entitled to: effective, nonpartisan, and economical execution of the responsibility that governments cannot escape, federal, state, and local. And I do believe that it is neglect that helps fuel the anger and the vitriol of the political process that we watch on our television screens night after night. And it's that neglect that's reflected in the decision of too many of our great universities and think tanks to emphasize over and over again big policy issues while they set aside the historic interest that we've had in good government and effective administration. I was struck a year or two ago by reading a short aphorism by Thomas Edison, the revered inventor. He crystallized the problem in 5 words. Vision without execution is hallucination. Hallucination seems to me all too close to an apt description of what's going on in our political system today. Now, as we approach the election, as we debate, as we should, the competing political visions, let's think a little more about one simple fact. Government is indeed here to stay. Whether smaller or larger, it needs to be reasonably well managed. More than that, it needs to be capable of maintaining the trust and pride in our governance and in our democratic processes. How else can we expect to again become a beacon of hope for a troubled world? Now, listening to me emote is the price of honoring me this evening. And I know I'm touching on what is an inherent part of the mission of the Foreign Policy Association. All I can say is keep at it. I thank you for what you're doing, and good night.